Okay, I think that we're probably okay to start going ahead. So hi everybody, I hope you're all well and that you can hear me okay. I'd just like to welcome everyone to our talk on supporting mental health during lockdown today. And thank you all so much for coming. So our first speaker will be Brendon from the Trinity Student Counselling Services, which will be followed by some questions. And then we will have our second speaker, Graham from NiteLine, followed by another round of questions. So if you think of anything that you'd like to ask at any point, please feel free to send your questions into the general Zoom chat or onto me, Peter Benson, privately. Thanks so much again for coming, and I will hand you over to Brendon from our Student Counselling Services first. Thank you, Brendon.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that intro. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Can people see this PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. So this is I modified a little bit of a PowerPoint from another presentation that I'd given earlier, just kind of talking about managing anxiety, isolation, and your mental health through the COVID pandemic. And at the end of the presentation, I'm also going to give some referrals about how you can contact student counseling services and other services on campus if you are feeling like your mental health is needing a little bit more support. So I just wanted to talk first about what anxiety is and really to normalize that for people, because I think people think, oh, I'm having this anxiety, it's really abnormal. Actually, anxiety is an absolutely natural and normal response to stress that our body feels. If you think about back when we were hunter-gatherers and kind of had to be on the lookout for threats in our environment, it was a really great way for us to get the sense of like, okay, I need to react to something to keep myself safe. And in that very same way, in our more modern social world, we still feel that sense of anxiety when we need to react in a way to keep ourselves safe. But I guess the meaning of safety has kind of expanded beyond just physical safety to include social safety, emotional, things like that as well. So obviously anxiety is incorporated with feelings of worry, feelings of nervousness, feeling uneasy. And then those reactions also cause physical responses too, such as some people feel nauseous or short of breath, like their heart is beating out of their chest, like it's really difficult to stay in the moment, things like that as well. So I just want to really normalize, everyone experiences anxiety, but it exists on a continuum and it can change based on your context and circumstances. And so right now, because of COVID, a lot of people are anticipating and expecting and experiencing an increase in anxiety because of all the different changes that we've had over the course of the year in terms of different levels and different meanings of each level. And what does that mean? Can I go to school? Can I see my family? Things like that. Worrying about family members or loved ones, changes in those expectations, feeling disconnected from other people. So these are all very, very normal things, very reasonable things that would cause anxiety for people, all this kind of uncertainty and changes on almost a month-to-month basis. And a lot of that does feel kind of out of our own personal control, right? Like if the government is saying, okay, this is what we're doing, then it feels kind of like you don't really have a say much in how you react to that. Which is true to some extent, but I'm going to go over some things later in the presentation about how you can start to kind of reclaim control and make sure that you're minding your anxiety in the ways that you can throughout this situation. Okay, so I just want to really emphasize everyone experiences anxiety to some level, but it might be time to ask for help either from student counseling or another resource if this is kind of all encompassing, if you're noticing that more often than not you're feeling anxious, you're kind of catastrophizing, maybe thinking like the world is going to end, you're having panic attacks. It starts interfering with your ability to function in school or work or your relationships, or if your reaction to an event is not causing significant anxiety in others, that could be a good clue as to maybe it might be time for you to ask for some support. with your anxiety. Again, with COVID, a lot of people are experiencing anxiety, which is kind of to be expected in these really stressful times. I'm just going to skip that next point because it's not super relevant. I'm going to get into the managing of anxiety now because I think it's probably the most helpful aspect of the presentation. So I want to just talk about coping with anxiety about COVID. So making sure that you're looking for accurate information. There was a ton of disinformation and wrong information at the beginning of the pandemic, and that still is kind of going on. So definitely looking for a trusted source like from the HSE or the WHO to get your information. If you're finding yourself really like rabbit holing with looking at news or constantly checking for updates, limiting the amount of time that you're spending consuming news, because that can really just turn into a vicious cycle. Building a routine. One thing that I've been recommending to all my clients lately with working from home is to just kind of stick to the same schedule that you would if you were at college, because I think right now it's really difficult to differentiate mentally between time when I'm on and doing college stuff or work stuff and time when I'm off and relaxing and taking time for self-care and things like that. So I think that's really important to set those boundaries and not let just working from home kind of leak into all the different areas of your life. Being intentional about staying connected. So scheduling hangouts, making sure that you are not just letting your relationships kind of fizzle out, letting go of and modifying pre-existing expectations of normal. I know this one's really hard because part of the expectation about going to college is that you're going to have all these kind of social interactions. You're going to see people at class, see people around the quad, whatever it might be. But kind of modifying those expectations for now. I think if that is something that you're looking forward to and hopeful for in the future, I think that that's great. Hold on to that hope, because I'm confident that hopefully in the next few months, with all the vaccine news and stuff coming out, that we will be able to go back to some aspect of normal. But just kind of accepting kind of where we are now, that doesn't mean agreeing with it or being happy about it, but just noting, here's where we're at, and things will change again in the future. Making sure that you're engaging in self-compassion. This is something that I think takes a lot of practice for people if they're not used to it, but really giving themselves permission to experience their emotions in a genuine way, setting aside time to note that you are doing the best that you can with the resources that you have available to you right now, and that's okay. And if you're struggling, that's okay. Practicing gratitude for the things that are going well, or even if it's not going well, maybe practicing gratitude for the support that you're receiving through that difficult time. Noticing and reflecting on your reactions. I'm going to come back to this acknowledgement types of thinking, maybe unhelpful piece, because I have another slide on that soon. And again, really making sure that you're taking time to set boundaries to engage in some relaxation, self-care, and things like that. I know, especially with working from home, it's hard to kind of find time for that, but really being intentional about that. Using campus resources and supports. Y'all are doing that by being in this presentation and staying connected to student groups. Of course, you can always reach out to us at Student Counseling for additional support. We actually have a coping, what do we name it? I think we called it like, anyway, it's we have a COVID specific support group right now that's just starting. So if you want more information about that, I can definitely give information about that in the Q&A. And yeah, so also seeking out professional help when it may seem necessary. Okay, moving on to this slide because I think it's really cool. This is a slide based on CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. In that style of therapy, clinicians, psychologists, whoever it might be, really focus on these kind of unhelpful thinking styles or kind of logical fallacies or cognitive distortions, whatever you want to call them. But we all do this to some level in our lives. And I think that being able to identify when we're doing this and falling into one of these unhelpful thinking styles can really help us make sense of what's going on in our internal world and then make positive changes after that. So I'm not going to go through all of these individually, But I think that some of the ones that I've been doing the most, or I've noticed my clients doing the most in response to COVID, have definitely been the one on the left saying magnification, which is also called catastrophizing or minimizing. So making sure that we're not turning a molehill into a mountain sort of situation. I know a lot of people think, oh, we're going back into level 5 or we're in level 5. Everything is going to be different. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be XYZ sort of bad thing, which might be true to some extent. It might not be what we like or what we enjoy, but is it as bad as we're really making it out to be in our mind? Another kind of similar one is the one on the top right that says jumping to conclusions. So imagining we know kind of what's the outcome of a situation is going to be or what other people are thinking. The crystal ball is there because it's also just called fortune telling, right? Like trying to read the future. And I think that people have done that a lot with COVID, saying like, well, we're never going to go back to normal, or this is going to go on forever, or for too long, and things like that, which isn't necessarily true. So just checking in on yourself if you're kind of finding that you're getting caught up in one of these unhelpful thinking styles. I like the poop emoji one in the bottom right as well, the should must. There's a really famous psychologist named Albert Ellis who said that you shouldn't should on yourself, which I think is a really helpful thing to remember, especially during difficult times. Not comparing yourself to how others are reacting, not holding yourself to impossible standards, and just really kind of doing your best to cope through a situation, but not putting these kind of artificial boundaries on what you need to be doing. I think especially that helps with anyone who has any tendencies to be a perfectionist or feel like I need to be working all the time. Now we're working from home. I should be studying more, or I should be doing this or that. Taking time for self-care is taking time to make sure that you can be successful in your course. So I really just want to give you permission for that if that's something that you've been struggling with. This is a cute little infographic as well that's talking specifically about COVID. There were just so many people focusing on all these things that they couldn't control, like if other people were following social distancing guidelines, how other people were acting. They even put the amount of toilet paper at the store on here, and the things that you can't control, because if you remember that whole chaos at the beginning of this whole situation. But I really want to encourage you to focus on those things in the middle that you can control. So you can control how much news you're consuming, being intentional about setting aside fun things to do at home or in a safe way outside or whatever it might be. How you react to situations. So if you can still be kind to others or forgiving yourself for messing up something. How you follow recommendations, things like that. So really quick with the time I have left, I want to jump into, this is, okay, I'm not going to skip this. I was going to skip this, but I think it's important. So I really just want to encourage you to stay connected. Y'all are connected to this student group. I think that's fantastic. If you are part of other groups on campus or even in your course, just making sure that you're checking in on the people that you care about, trying to, again, set aside time intentionally to stay connected, because that is such an important buffer against stress, anxiety, depression, things like that. It, not only now, but just always being connected is a really, really important factor for our mental health. Even if that needs to be creative, like getting online in an online hobby, or gaming community, or an interest community that you have. There are lots of sites that are really great for that now, like Reddit, or there's meetup.com. I know people aren't really meeting up in person right now, but facilitating different groups to talk about your interests and things can be really cool. And being just genuine, showing that, if you're struggling with something and open up about to a friend or someone in your family about that, they might share with you that they're struggling too, and maybe you can connect about that, or they can offer you support or something like that. So I know that my time is running low. I want to jump to this slide because it points you to our Silver Cloud page, which is provided to all the students for free at Trinity. This is a program that is self-guided and based on cognitive behavioral therapy that you can sign up for. Again, it's free, and one of the modules is specific to managing anxiety because of COVID-19. So if you or someone else that you know on campus has been experiencing a lot of stress related to COVID, this is a great resource that they can go to. Another way that they can get in contact with student counseling services is just by emailing us. If you go to our website, all of our contact info is listed there, but our email is just student-counseling@tcd.ie. We are offering individual counseling groups, as I mentioned, such as the Managing COVID group. We help run the Silver Cloud program, among other things as well. So I think that that's a really great resource if that's something that you might be interested in. We also do offer any sort of like emergency services. We do have emergency walk-in appointments. You still have to contact the front desk right now to get that sorted. But if you or anyone you know has an increase in like suicidal thoughts or thoughts of self-harm, anything like that, and needs support like immediately, please know that we do have someone on call for that during the day. And that if it's after hours, of course, you can contact NiteLine, or you can contact the crisis text line that we provide, which is activated by texting TCD to 50808. So I know that was a ton of information and not a very long amount of time, but I think just for the sake of time, we should switch over to any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Brendon. That was so informative and so helpful as well. I just have a couple of questions here, if that's okay.
Sure.
So firstly, I was just wondering, obviously you mentioned how it can kind of be difficult to differentiate between like time for relaxing and time for studying and reading at home, considering like some people might even like, you know, be at home the whole time, and it's just kind of hard to make the differentiation. So would you have any like tips for or advice for staying motivated to keep doing work during lockdown?
Yes, that's a great question. I would definitely recommend, if you can, to the extent that you can, differentiating your physical space. So there are places that you can go on campus right now. You can book to, if you are close to campus, or that's something that you can do, that you can book for study space. So if you can get out of your apartment or your dorm and get on campus, to kind of have that be your dedicated place where you are going to spend studying, so that your apartment or you're just living space is a little bit more reserved for kind of your own personal life. I think that's great. If that's something that you can't do, even just simply differentiating what part of the room you're sitting in or how your work area is set up can really help you get into that like work mode mind space versus relaxation mode. So I would say just thinking about how the physical space that you're in, the environment that you're in, is contributing to your sense of whether you're working or relaxing, and really being intentional about trying to keep your personal space or just like your personal life. I know it can be really tempting to just want to stay in bed and work on the computer there, or something like that, but that really is difficult for our mind to then differentiate. Okay, am I supposed to be in bed working? Am I supposed to be sleeping? Like, what is the purpose of this space? So even if it's just simply going to the kitchen table or something to work, I think that that can make a big difference.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also along a similar sort of note, would you have any advice for students who might be struggling to keep a good sleep schedule during
Yes.
the lockdown?
Yes. So I would recommend anyone who's struggling with sleep to Google, it's called sleep hygiene. Just like there's dental hygiene or other forms of physical hygiene, there is sleep hygiene. And as I kind of mentioned earlier, one of the big things about that is keeping your bed a space simply for sleeping. So making sure that when you're in bed, you're not watching TV, on your computer, playing games, whatever it might be, really only being in bed for sleeping. Keeping a consistent schedule. I know that that's difficult, especially on the weekends. You kind of want to sleep in, but kind of staying within like a 30-minute wake up time every day, and same thing for going to bed can be really important. Setting up a sleep routine. So like, for example, some people like to take a shower before they go to bed, or they like to drink a cup of non-caffeinated tea or something like that. Kind of getting into that same routine every night so that your body is kind of prompted to say, okay, like we're kind of getting ready for bed. Just even from that like classical conditioning school of thought, I think can be really helpful. So those are some tips just right off the top of my head that are related to sleep hygiene, but there's lots more. And the more that you do, the more likely that you're going to start finding that it's easier to fall asleep, you're getting better quality sleep, things like that. So please just give that a Google if that's something that you're struggling with, and try to incorporate some of those skills.
Thank you. And also, I would just be interested in hearing more about that COVID support group that you mentioned.
Yeah, so we have a support group. It's on Thursdays from 2 to 3 p.m. That a counselor from Student Counseling Services is running. If you are interested in that, more info can be found on our webpage or on our social media. You don't have to come in to do like a full initial consultation to join the group, from my understanding, but you do need to register in advance by filling out a Google form. If you just email us at student-counseling@tcd.ie, you can get that form sent to you and get registered for the group. Everyone in the group is going to be struggling with managing the effects of COVID in one way or another. Maybe they're having anxiety about the actual virus itself, or the impacts of it, the pandemic, on their school life or home life or whatever it might be. And so I think that's a great place to kind of ask for support, show kind of support to others, and maybe collaboratively brainstorm about how we can kind of get through this together. So I think that'll be a good resource for people as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And also, just as a last question, I was wondering, would you have any tips on how to kind of keep a healthy diet during lockdown? Because I know that obviously when people are working from home, it's so much easier to kind of maybe slip up on that front. So just would you have any advice on that?
That's a great question. I didn't even think about that before getting into this session. So one thing that I would definitely recommend is planning in advance any meals that you can. I think that when we are kind of hungry in the moment and there's nothing really available, it's really easy for us to make less healthy choices about food, either ordering a takeaway or just eating like ramen or something. So if you can be intentional about making sure that you have healthy food accessible to you, so that you have it available when you are feeling hungry, that is really important. I often encourage people to have healthy snacks nearby, like fruits, vegetables, things like that, and trying to incorporate those into every meal. A lot of people I know prior to lockdown who were going to work every day and things like that were getting into, I know meal prepping was like a big thing. I would encourage you to still do that if that's something that interests you, especially if you could meal prep one big healthy meal that you could have leftovers for throughout the week, for lunch or something. That can be a good way to make sure that at least one of your meals a day is really health focused. And then having those other healthy foods around might increase, the chances that you'll eat something healthy. So I think, yeah, that's a great question. And I would encourage you to just be intentional and mindful about what food choices you're making. And if part of the issue is having the food available to you, trying to be more intentional when you're at the grocery store about what you're buying and what you're having available in your space.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for all of that, Brendon. It's definitely so helpful, and I hope it will provide some sort of mid-semester reassurance for anybody watching. So our next speaker is Graham, who is from NiteLine. So thank you so much for coming to talk with us, Graham.
Hi, yeah, thanks very much for having me. So yeah, I'm just going to screen share as well, so just bear with me for one sec. And yeah, so can you see all that? Okay, cool. So Yeah, I just wanted to talk quite briefly, I suppose, about two things, loneliness and reaching out. And yeah, I kind of threw these slides together a little bit over the last day or two, so they're a little bit all over the place. But I want to look at them through the perspective of NiteLine. So if you're not really sure what NiteLine is, basically we're a student-run listening service. So it's entirely for students, by students, both for Trinity and for like lots of different Dublin colleges. And it's entirely anonymous and it's confidential and it's non-judgmental. But we're just a listening service. We're not like trained counselors or anything, so we don't really give advice. But yeah, like I said, we're all students. I just started a master's in management in Trinity, and my undergrad was English. So we're kind of all just students, just doing our thing. But yeah, I know you've all been having a great time there with your mics on mute and your like camera switched off. Maybe for a second you could unmute yourselves. If anyone can tell me like who this woman is on the screen. Does anyone know? Joe Cox, anyone recognize the name? No, you're not listening to your news. So Joe Cox was, well, it's a slightly tragic story, so I won't dwell on it too much, but she was a Labour MP in the UK who was murdered in 2016. But yeah, basically like probably a few years ago now, I'm 99% sure, I was sitting in like the dining hall having my lunch in Trinity, and I was reading the news about her anyway, after she got killed. And one thing that I found really interesting is that she had set up a loneliness commission. And I was kind of a bit surprised by all this, because I was like, it's amazing that loneliness has become such like an epidemic, if you want to use that word, that there has to be like a government commission set up to deal with it. So this kind of what she's saying is, she was like, you know, she wouldn't live in a country where thousands of people are living lonely lives forgotten by the rest of us. So I had a read through this commission report, and I just want to pick out some of the, some quotes from the introduction of the report, I suppose. So she says, or well, it was finished by her other like friends and MPs. The commission was a response to Joe's own experience of finding herself a fish out of water at university and experiencing deep loneliness, and later of seeing the devastating effects of loneliness in her constituency. Joe recognised that loneliness was a huge problem, that it could affect any one of us, and that its impacts were real and lasting. She wanted to bring new focus and attention to loneliness in our communities and to encourage action. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, you know, these kind of things were brought up so early in the report. Like you see there, like college, like university is brought up, like linked with loneliness, you know, that it could affect anyone, and that she wanted to encourage action. And that's kind of the theme of this presentation a little bit, I suppose, is like those things, and particularly like to encourage action. That's something I kind of want to get across. So, you know, who suffers from loneliness then? I went and had a bit of a dig around, I suppose, and these statistics are for the UK, but I said the characteristics of people who are more likely to experience loneliness include those who are widowed, those with poor health, and those with long-term illness or disabilities. 43% of the group reporting bad or very bad health are often or always lonely. So why did I pick this statistic? I don't know. Well, I just thought it was interesting because like 43% of the group reporting bad or very bad health also said they're often or always lonely. And like, it is a bit of a reach. Like, obviously I don't know the full situation, but I would guess there that like they're often or always lonely, because if you're in very poor health, you know, you're kind of housebound a little bit. You're not going to be able to socialize as much as you can. And that's kind of how we all are at the moment, is that, you know, there is like a health crisis. Like, we are all housebound pretty much. So I think that does, you know, make us a bit more vulnerable, I suppose, to loneliness. You know, that's fairly simple. I feel like you could have told me that yourself. But yeah, loneliness demonstrates a U-shaped distribution, with those aged under 25 years and those aged over 65 demonstrating the highest levels of loneliness. So again, we're seeing this, those aged under 25, you know, more like susceptible to loneliness, and especially like in the context of, you know, what is essentially like a health crisis now. You know, that kind of puts us in a vulnerable position. And then moving closer to home a little bit, this USI mental health report came out think it was over summer, like early summer, so it's pretty recent. I think there would have been on data from before COVID, but you know, less than 12% of students reported not feeling lonely at all, with the remainder feeling it occasionally, sometimes nearly 30%, often 26%, and like nearly 10% of students said they felt lonely all the time. That's an awful lot of students. So for NiteLine, I suppose, like how many loneliness calls do we take? So yes, if you're brave, take a guess. Does anyone have any idea? Roughly, like as a percentage of our overall call volume, like 10%, 20%, 50%? Anyone, any takers?
Maybe 30%.
It's actually, do you know, I was surprised at how little it is. It's actually, well, thanks for making the guess. Last year it was 6.2%, but that was our 5th highest call topic, because we just take calls on so many different issues that loneliness, like as a percentage, isn't massive, but in terms of calls, like it is a lot. Like it's our 5th highest call topic. And yeah, that was last year. This year, it's gone up actually to 8.5%, where the primary topic is about loneliness. So, you know, again, it's not like 95% calls are about loneliness, but it has gone up by a quarter. Yeah, 7.7% kind of mentioned as the secondary topic, and it's our 3rd highest call topic overall. So it's gone up from number 5 to number 3. And of course, the big thing with that is COVID. And yeah, COVID is 7% of our calls, where is kind of marked where the primary issue is COVID, and the secondary topic in 6.5%. So it's obviously made a massive difference, because, you know, obviously COVID wasn't a call topic last year. Like we just wouldn't have logged it. Whereas kind of jumped in straight as being like our 5th highest call topic. So I think the two definitely obviously are quite linked. So yeah, how do we deal with loneliness? And this is coming from NiteLine's own perspective, I suppose. So I went back and had a look at some of our training materials to see like what is the best way that we deal with loneliness calls, I suppose. And I just kind of want to clarify is that these are taken, like I took this text from like our refresher slides, but not from like our actual training materials, which would be kind of more in depth. But yeah, like there's many different reasons a caller may feel lonely. For NiteLine, we're only there to listen to callers' concerns. It's not our job to make it better, but it is our job to understand what it is. So yeah, like I said, you're not like you don't want to like jump to conclusions. You kind of don't want to trample people when they're feeling lonely with like suggestions on how they could feel less lonely or whatever. We're very much just there to kind of like listen. And there's a need to focus on the present, on what they are experiencing and what they are thinking, rather than what they could be experiencing and what they could be thinking, which I think is a really interesting one when I was reading that, because like how many times have you heard, you know, in the last few months, people being like, oh, like that used to be so fun. We used to like have that event and then we'd all go to the pub afterwards, but sure, look, you can't do that now because of COVID. Like that's something that I've heard an awful lot. And I mean, it's a completely valid thing to say, but it kind of does dwell a little bit on like, it could be that way rather than like this, you know, it's like, it's kind of dwelling on things that could be rather than like understanding what it is now, if that makes sense. So yeah, again, I've taken these from our own training materials, but I think they're very relevant to you if like you had a friend or something that that said they were lonely. And I certainly have had friends over the last like lockdown or whenever, like this year, that have kind of like been very like feeling down on themselves. So yeah, this is how we deal with it. It's called the CUP model or CUP model. It's not exactly the flashiest name, whatever it was, I'm not gonna lie, but it seems to work. So it's connect, understand, empower. So say you had a friend in front of you now that just said, or like you were texting them or something, and they said they're feeling so lonely, so down themselves. So you connect with the person, use a friendly, caring tone. When they're speaking, don't think about your reply, just focus on what they're saying. This way, your responses will come out more naturally and will help them feel more comfortable around you because you sound more sincere and authentic. Try to avoid silence in these conversations as they are looking for someone to talk to and often to get away from silence. So that's connect. So you've kind of opened up the conversation now, you know, and you're ready to kind of understand them a little bit more, to really, you know, to let them talk. So understanding, ask open-ended questions. Ask them to clarify if you're unsure what they mean, and make sure you make them feel understood. Use your lack of knowledge about their situation as a tool so they explain it to you how they feel. You're letting them tell their side of the story. You know, you make them feel special for a little while. That thing about the lack of knowledge about their situation, that's maybe more specific to NiteLine. Like, I feel like if it was your friend, you might know more, whereas obviously we wouldn't know a caller. But even still, even if it's your own like best friend, you don't necessarily know why, like, you know, they brought it up in conversation to you that night. Like, you don't know if they had like a fight with like their boyfriend or girlfriend, or like if they, you know, had something going on at home that like they hadn't told you about. So yeah, it's that don't jump to conclusions, very much like, you know, let them like talk it out themselves. Don't try to solve their problem. Again, that's one that's maybe more specific to NiteLine as an organization. If it's your friend, you can absolutely, you know, try and help them. But again, don't like just trample them a little bit when like they're just trying to have their, like, just trying to feel heard. Remember, people can also be lonely to be met at kind of like the soul level, but still have many people around them. Because I think that is kind of one that people tend to overlook a little bit. And then empowering the person. So there's no like goal to empowerment. It's just about being there for them while they talk. You know, let them like own that conversation and really like own those feelings, I suppose. Because it is empowering to really open up and to be vulnerable in a way, if that makes sense. See this as facilitating the process of them looking at their own situation. So, you know, they reflect back on themselves and what they've just said and how they feel, and kind of let them come to their own conclusions. So that's the cup model. For us in NiteLine, we find it very beneficial, I suppose, is that sometimes loneliness calls tend to be like they can kind of go around circles a little bit, like they become quite cyclical. You know, where people are like, oh, I'm lonely, and we're like, that's tough. Like, how does that make you feel? And they say, well, lonely, and it kind of goes round and round. So often it's beneficial to have it as to kind of let the conversation open up a little bit more. And that's something that you could definitely do in real life as well, or not in real life, but like with your own friends. So yeah, we call those calls chatty calls. So that's when, you know, somebody rings us or whatever, with no particular issue in mind, like they just want to chat about current events, their day-to-day life, their favorite TV show. It is a bit of an odd one for volunteers, I'm not going to lie, because 99% of the time, you know, we're really trained to think that, you know, people will call a service such as us in distress or to talk through a particular problem. But chatty calls are actually really nice. Like we do get the odd one, definitely. Like I took one not way long ago, but I was just chatting a lot about my dogs. It was very cute. And yeah, would a chatty conversation benefit this person? Like, I think it definitely would. Like, if you're talking to somebody, you know, your friend who's feeling lonely, you know, after they've vented about their emotions, it might be beneficial to just have a good conversation where they feel invested and listened to, especially if it's something that they're very like passionate about. Is that they've come to you, you know, they've said they're lonely. Now the best thing to do is just talk to them and make them feel like, you know, they have that like connection, that relationship. So to bring it back a little bit to that loneliness commission that Joe Cox set up. So what were their recommendations? So, well, they had some recommendations, but they're like very specific to like the UK government. So that's so much point bringing them back here. But yes, they had some recommendations for like us, you and I as individuals. So they said, take care of ourselves. We need to check our relationship balances at least as often as we check our bank balances, and think about whether we've got the connections we need to keep us going. I actually really like that thought of like checking your relationship balances at least as often as you do your bank. Taking care of others. We all need to think about our families, neighbours and wider communities and consider who may be feeling lonely. What can we do to reach out and help others who feel connected, or help others to feel connected? Maybe it's as simple as letting people know that we are happy to chat. And that phrase, it came up a couple of times in that commission recommendations, and it comes up quite a lot in NiteLine as well. It's definitely one that's so like broad and vague and safe, I suppose. We use it a lot in NiteLine as well. It's one that you can definitely take to your own like friends and conversations as well, as just say that like you're just happy to chat. And lastly, they said that we should create connection-friendly communities. Community and voluntary sector groups have a responsibility to make sure that their work helps people to connect and build relationships. And that's another one which is very relevant as well, because obviously like you guys as a society, you know, you're here, you're making your own connections, and I'm sure you kind of do that as well, like outside just your own society. Yeah, with the people that you work with and stuff. So yeah, coming on to the reaching out part of it, I suppose, because that's something that the second point there said, that something we can do is really reach out to like our friends and our neighbors and our families and stuff. So I'm a big fan of, it's quite an old style saying now, I suppose, but like, our burden shared is burden halved. Although like every time I think of that, I think of, do you know the bit in Monty Python and The Life of Brian, where like this guy's carrying his cross out because to like for crucifixion or whatever, and this good Samaritan comes up and is like, oh, I'll give you, you know, he offers like to give him a hand. And the man just like lumps the cross onto him and then runs away. I don't know why, but that's not like entirely relevant here, I suppose. But yeah, a burden shared is a burden halved. So if you guys yourselves ever feel like, if you feel lonely, if you feel you know, like you need someone to talk to, like you can reach out to NiteLine or to the student counselling service, or to like, there's so many other services. And like from the bottom of my heart, it is absolutely the best thing to do. I know it's easier said than done, but yeah, but you know, it just is so helpful. And then I suppose reaching out to your own friends as well is kind of what I mean there, because like I really do feel like we're all so like complex, we're going through so much, like with COVID, or like generally just being in your 20s, or like all those other like college and like, I don't know, job and like everything else, like your friendships and stuff. There's so much to navigate. I really feel like reaching out, both for loneliness and just for like mental health in general, is you know, kind of necessary to kind of make sense of everything. So my undergrad was English. I wasn't going to do a presentation without sticking in a quote. So I picked one from Hard Times, which is a fairly aptly named Charles Dickens novel. And yeah, he just talks about, he's talking about like workers, like kind of like office workers or whatever. This is obviously like, you know, Victorian Britain. But yeah, just bear with me for 1 second while I read this. So it is known to the force of a single pound weight what the engine will do. But not all the calculators of the national debt can tell me the capacity for good or evil, for love or hatred, for patriotism or discontent, for the decomposition of virtue into vice or the reverse at any single moment. In the soul of one of these, its quiet servants, with the composed faces and the regulated actions, there is no mystery in it. There is an unfathomable mystery in the meanest of them, forever. So what that quote is kind of saying is, you know, like humans aren't machines. You can calculate, you know, the output of an engine, but you can never really quantify or calculate, you know, human beings. They're just way too complex. You can just never calculate like the capacity for good or for evil, for love or for hatred, and all those things. There's just too much going on. I think it's a really brilliant quote. I really liked it. And yeah, there's an unfathomable mystery in people. And then, you know, to make sense of all that, you've really got to, you can't just have it all bottled up. You've really got to reach out to others. So we know people are out there. We know like they're lonely, it's that they have their issues. And are they reaching out? I mean, if you have a quick look at, I suppose these are all our for NiteLine's own call stats. And you can definitely see that people are, even particularly this year. So what you're looking at there is those kind of orange lines are 2017, 2018. So we tend to get like quite a lot of calls early on in the year when people come into college, and then it dips over Christmas when like we as a service shut over Christmas, and then it gets busy again, kind of close to the exam time around summer. And then the green line is last year, so you can see it's a bit all over the place. started off very busy, and then eventually COVID came and shut us early. But then the purple line is this year. And as you can see there, it's kind of spiked fairly early on. So yeah, it looks like our call volumes are pretty high. I'm not gonna lie, it's been quite busy. But that's such a good thing, because it kind of shows that people are reaching out, that people kind of are recognizing, like, you know, they have these, you know, if they're feeling lonely or they need someone to talk to, you know, there are options there. Because there's not just NiteLine. NiteLine is just one small organization, and there's so many other that are available. So I suppose just in conclusion, loneliness is a huge problem. It affects those of all demographics. Those particularly vulnerable include those with health risks, or those under 25. To help those who are lonely, use that CUP model: connect, understand, empower. Look after yourselves and others by checking your relationship balances. Reach out to others for a chat. Humans are complex beings and rely on others to make sense of emotions. If you would like someone to talk to, there are many services available, including the student counselling service and NiteLine. NiteLine volunteers are fellow students trained to listen. Our calls are anonymous, confidential, non-directive, and non-judgmental. It's also free. If you are ever feeling lonely, reach out to NiteLine. There's no issue too big or too small. So I'm going to leave you one last quote again from Hard Times, which I think is kind of funny. So he's talking about like this kind of evil, you know, factory owner, like kind of mental, like capitalist figure or whatever. He says, he sat writing in the room with the deadly statistical clock, proving something, no doubt, probably in the main, that the Good Samaritan was a bad economist. So it's up to you to decide if the two are mutually exclusive. Like, I study a management, like a business master's, and I volunteer for an organization based on the Samaritans. So I really hope they're not mutually exclusive. But yeah, I think I would like you guys to, you know, to kind of be those like good Samaritans, to like take action, to, you know, act on those, that loneliness commission recommendations, you know, to reach out to those around you, to your other, you know, really complex friends and family and fellow students that are dealing with so much in themselves. So yeah, I think that's all I've got to say for today. So yeah, let me know any questions that you have. Well, thanks a million, guys.
Thank you so much for that, Graham. It's really great to hear about all the different services open to students during these times. And thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and everything with us as well. So I also just have a couple of questions for you. So my first question is, how exactly would someone go about using NiteLine services?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll just, in that case, I'm going to re-screen share because I think it has the things on it. Yeah, so you see there is that, well, at the moment we're open only with instant messaging just because of level 5. It's kind of messed us up a little bit. So the website is niteline.ie. So you just go on there. We're open every night term. It's like late night hours. So normally we run 9 p.m. to 2:30 in the morning. But just because level 5 is kind of different, it's 8:30 to 12:30. But yeah, you can, it's instant messaging. So for your computer, and then normally, like if there are restrictions of these, we'll kind of get back to our normal like call taking center. So there's a free phone as well. It's 1-800-793-793. And yeah, once the restrictions lift, like I said, it'll be open like 9 to 2:30 every single night term.
Perfect, thank you so much. And so just, so it can sometimes be difficult for people to reach out for help. So I was just wondering if you would have any advice for people maybe in taking that first step to ask for help from their friends or from services such as the student counselling service or NiteLine.
Yeah, I mean, with NiteLine, it's obviously it's quite simple. Like you can literally just go on the website. Like I said, it's anonymous and it's confidential. So like we as callers we don't know who you are. You know, we won't. You know, you're not supposed to give identifying information. So like it's so like you just don't know who you're talking to. You're just talking to another student, and that's it. So if you're kind of, feeling a little bit vulnerable, or like you don't want to, if you're like a little bit intimidated, I suppose, to have a like that kind of like direct contact, it is a good way to really get something off your chest, you know. And then with student counselling service, yeah, as far as I know, you can just book it online, or like email, and yeah, obviously it's, you know, the mechanisms are there. Like it's quite simple to go on our website or to like email, but I feel like there's more of like a psychological barrier for people all the time. And yeah, that's, I mean, I don't know if I have particular advice, because like I'm not a counselor, you know what I mean? Like I'm just a student, same as yourselves. But I think the one thing is that it is really important to just kind of keep emphasizing that point of, you know, with like when you take that step, like everything else starts to fall into place a little bit more. And that you know, once you like push yourself to finally reach out, and especially if it's to your friends, they'll be so like, everyone will be so like open and like receptive to that, or at least I would certainly hope so. So I know it seems intimidating now, but like kind of once you really do reach out, and kind of look for help, usually it really is worth it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also I was just wondering, from your training and your experience with NiteLine, would you have any sort of advice maybe for students in relation to staying mindful and kind of just keeping like the sort of anxieties at bay during this sort of time?
Yeah, like it is particularly difficult now, definitely with COVID, but I think like, this is literally just speaking from personal experience. I really find like journaling is something that's quite beneficial, and that's something that is emphasized to us as well in our training. Is that it's just a very good way to like kind of get your thoughts down on paper or whatever and out of your head a little bit. And that's something that I quite like. I also tend to just rely an awful lot on my own friends. A big like preference of mine when I'm annoyed is just send like a big ranty voicemail to like one of my friends or whoever, to just like, you know, like a voice note or whatever on WhatsApp, and just like rant for like 5 minutes or whatever, and then just send it off and be done with it. Because usually you get some kind of sympathy back, which is nice. But yeah, also like I've tried this, like two of the girls who I live with have been trying for months to get me into meditation. It doesn't seem to work that well for me, but they both swear by it. You know, if they used to use Headspace or like the Calm app or whatever. And yeah, in terms of like mindfulness, that seems to really do them wonders. So that's definitely something. But those things are like quite like basic recommendations, I feel. But yeah, just from my own experience, they're the ones that seem to work quite a lot.
Thank you so much for that, Graham. I just have, sorry, a question in the group chat from the other Peter Benson. So he has a question for Brendon in relation to CBT. So he says that a podcast he listened to recently mentioned that CBT involves having strong beliefs, in the sense that you don't be black and white about things and set your expectations too high about goals, etc. He's just wondering whether this is true, and whether you think this is at odds with the hustle culture that we are often faced with, that we should all or nothing follow our dreams, career goals, etc.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you found the presentations helpful. First of all, I will say that what I would imagine the person in the podcast was probably trying to emphasize was that there is a spectrum of achievement that we might have with our goals, right? If our ultimate goal, let's say, is finishing college, right? There's lots of smaller mini steps that we need to overcome and achieve before we get to that ultimate goal. So it's not just all or nothing. I'm either going to finish college or I'm not. Giving yourself kind of that sense of accomplishment for breaking your goals down into more manageable tasks, and really being grateful and proud of the steps that you have made towards your goals, and also not putting a timeline on the completion of those goals, and really just kind of checking in with yourself about where you're at in your life, and if your goals are kind of realistic and working for you right now, or if you are just kind of hustling for the sake of the hustle, or because other people are putting expectations on you, or you should have done this by now, or should someone else tells you that to be worthwhile in society that you have to do XYZ sort of thing. So I think that that's probably kind of the general idea that they were going towards. I think it's great to have goals. I think we should all have healthy goals, but not to we should only be evaluating ourselves based on where we were yesterday in our own lives, not based on what other people think where we should be, or culture tells us, or get down on ourselves if we have a bad day and slip back a little bit, because that doesn't mean that we are a failure. It just means that we came up with into a barrier, and that will probably get around it at some point. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Brendon. And just on a final note, I was wondering if maybe either of you have any sort of final messages or advice or anything you'd like to leave people with today as we finish up.
I just wanted to quickly jump in about the asking for help situation, especially as it comes to student counseling. Like, all of the people who work here are trained, some of us for many, many years in counseling, and we have heard it all at this point. So nothing that you say is going to surprise us. We are not going to judge you for any of the struggles that you're facing in your life or your reaction to those struggles. And we are truly only in this field because we want to help. So please, if that gives you some sense of comfort, to know that there will be no sort of judgment passed on asking for help. In fact, we find it a real strength of students who can ask for help. So I just wanted to kind of say that as well.
Thank you so much.
And I suppose just to mirror exactly what Brendon just said, is that we too, like, we're at NiteLine, at least, we're all volunteers. Like, we're all students that applied for it just purely out of like wanting to help other people. And yeah, we take calls on everything. Like, there's kind of the same as what Brendon just said, like, nothing you say is really going to phase us too much. So I would really encourage people to to reach out, or at least to like encourage their friends and really like normalize reaching out and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Graham. Yeah, I think we're probably nearing towards the end of our talk now. So I wanted to say thank you so much to both Graham and Brendon from VDP for coming and providing us with such an informative talk today. I know I definitely really enjoyed it myself, and I'm sure everybody watching too did and learned a lot as well. I'd also like to say thank you so much to everybody who's come to watch the talk. I'm sure that you'll all be able to take away some important points from what our speakers have said. So I think that's probably everything for now. So thanks so much again, and I think I will probably just end the Zoom now, but thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Please feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day, guys. See ya.